Thank you. Okay, everyone. This is the Finance Committee on Thursday, March 20th, 2025 at 4 p.m. I am going to do a roll call and calling the meeting to order. Peter Schaefer.
Here.
Joe Wright.
Aye. Here.
Chris Glowacki.
Here.
Rob Giacchetti.
Here.
Jeremy Bloomer.
Here.
And Denise is here. Okay, may I have an approval of the agenda, please? There's no changes to the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Made by Peter, seconded by Joe. Roll call. Peter.
Aye.
Joe.
Aye.
Jeremy.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Rob.
Aye.
And Denise, aye. Thank you. I am opening the meeting for public comment for anything that is not on our agenda. And I'm closing public comment. Okay. Agenda item number 4, discussion, deliberation, and recommendations for the outstanding warrant articles for the annual town meeting 2025, including any articles that may need to be revisited. Article 10, primary sponsor select board, appropriation, general fund capital expenditures. And just as a reminder to everyone, we have been through this twice. On February 1st, when we went through it with all the town departments, and the subsequent meeting with David Gray and the other one, solid waste. And then when we also heard from Capcom. So, okay. Brian, I guess over to you, unless Libby's desperate to jump in on this one. There, she's shaking her head no. So Brian, over to you.
She said no. Thank you, Madam Chair. So we're before you to ask for for the FinCom to reopen Article 10, because you did approve the motion as originally drafted at a prior meeting. And as we mentioned, there are 2 additions. One we did discuss last week, which was part of the Surfside area roads reconstruction. We needed to add a borrowing authority in the same comparable amount as we're rescinding from 2 sidewalk projects in Article 23. And then we also needed to add acquisition of a piece of property that came later in the process. And I would note before you asked to reopen the article, Madam Chair, that Susan Carmel, our Assistant Finance Director, is working with the chair of the Capcom to get not only the water department mobile treatment plants, the house purchase, and the Surfside area roads to be presented in just an overview of the changes to Capcom on next Tuesday. I just wanted to let everybody know that we had committed to discussing it with them. That's their next regularly scheduled meeting before we asked for a motion to reopen this. So we are working with them to follow through on the commitment that we made to the FinCom.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion to reopen Article 10, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Peter. I need
Second.
a second vote. Thank you. A second from Joe. Okay. Peter,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Jeremy,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
Denise, aye. It's reopened. Okay. All right, Brian, I know you just summarized why we're reopening it, but is there anything you'd like to add to that summary?
If you want to just put the motion up, Stephen, so that we can show the committee the changes, scroll down. So the first one is we would seek to appropriate $2 million from the sale of real estate account for the purpose as noted there, which is the cost associated with acquisition by the select board. We're going to take out gift, purchase, or eminent domain from this. It does not need to be in there, but the rest of the article is okay. So those will be stricken. And then the last one is, if you just keep scrolling down, is DPW transportation is as noted here, Public Works transportation costs associated with the Surfside area roads reconstruction and transportation improvements. The $1,275,496 is consistent with the 2 sidewalk improvement plan articles that we're rescinding borrowing amounts in that same amount. Now, if you could scroll down, Stephen, please, a little bit further. The new total with the inclusions, Madam Chair, is $32,139,146. And the motion is there with the inclusion of the sale of real estate account and the additional borrowing authorization as noted. And I'm happy to answer any questions from the committee.
Thank you, Brian. Joe?
Brian, can you give me an idea of how much money you expect to borrow in fiscal 26 and 27? And roughly, I don't need brain surgery to the penny, but más o menos.
I think, to be honest with you, Joe, some of that will be very dependent on the timing of the projects in here, when they're going to go forward, and some of that will be dependent on discussions with the department heads, and some of it is very dependent for 25, 26 and 27, as you asked, is very, very dependent on the outcome of the standalone borrowing articles and the timing of those cash flow needs. And I'll give you an example. Island Home is a large number, and we have no cash flow pro forma yet done for analyzation because we don't have that final contract number. But on an annual basis, in bands that we typically use for cash flow purposes across the entire entity, we typically are in the market for anywhere between $25 to $35 million annually in bands for short-term purposes that ultimately we go long at, usually anywhere from 12 to 18 months after the issuance of the band. So if that large project were to pass, that $25 to $35 million probably would change substantially, probably by 20 or 30 or 40 million, depending on the ultimate cash flow pro forma that the OPM generates for us.
Okay, I hope at some point I can sit down with you. That this is,
Yep.
it's a bit of Greek. And can I ask what contingent on a proposition 2 1/2 capital outlay exclusion?
Sure. So for the purposes of raising funds such as this, we typically use a capital exclusion, which is contingent on a ballot vote. And we use it for a one-time increase to the tax levy on an annual basis for vehicles and rolling stock. So that everything that is outlined or has that note, if the ballot question were to fail at the annual town election, we would not have the authorization to expend for those purposes that carry that provision in this article.
Thank you.
Other questions for Brian? Okay, seeing none, may I have a motion?
Motion to adopt.
Thank you. Peter, may I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jeremy. Made by Peter, seconded by Jeremy. Roll call. Peter,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Jeremy,
Aye.
and Denise, aye. That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, committee reports. Is there anyone that has a committee report? Peter's shaking his head no, and I
Nope.
think he's the only one on a committee, so, all right, so that takes care of that. Date of next meeting is next Thursday, March 27th at 4 o'clock. It's fully remote. We will be finishing the tranche of minutes that Stephen is so heroically working on, and that will draw a line under that. And is there any other business before I ask for adjournment? Okay, seeing none, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Made by Peter, seconded by Jeremy. Peter,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Jeremy,
Aye.
Denise, aye. Thank you, everybody, as usual. Staff, thanks so much for this, and see you next Thursday.
Thank you, FinCom, for all your work as you come through the end of your cycle. Really, really appreciate it.
Thanks, Brooke. Okay, see you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.